subscribe చేయాలి నా ఇంతే వస్తుంది లేకపోతే Imagine a university that doesn't just educate, it empowers. Where your potential transcends borders and your impact transforms communities. Welcome to Woxsen.
Hello.
Imagine a university that doesn't just educate, it empowers.
Hello. Guys, all the volunteers to be seated as well. Please find a seat for yourself, maybe in the last bench, in the media space. All the volunteers to be seated. Nishant, volunteers to be seated. Right. People, can we please clap when
esteemed scholars, and our enthusiastic students here with us today. I am thrilled to announce to you the first ever LitFest 24. Can we have a huge round of applause?
My name is Anisha.
And I am Karanveer.
We are delighted to lead you through today's festivities, celebrating the rich tapestry of literary culture.
Woxsen University has a long-standing tradition of fostering intellectual exchange, critical thinking, and has a profound appreciation for the transformative nature of literature. Our students not only indulge in various creative avenues of their own, but they also are given a forum and they're given events, clubs, and activities that are solely dedicated to literature, which are performed and indulging in complete love and made the most out of.
Today's program is a testament to this very tradition. We have curated for you an exceptional lineup of author talks and interactive workshops.
We are especially thrilled to announce to you our keynote speaker for the day, Sri M.J. Akbar. Can we have a huge round of applause? Sri M.J. Akbar, a distinguished author, critic, and an influential figure in today's literary landscape, we will be getting glimpses of his creative insights, sources of its inspiration, and also Sri M.J. Akbar will be telling us about the timeless significance of storytelling in the contemporary literature. We will also be joined by Ms. Devika Chopra, who is a news anchor on NewsX, and Ms. Shilpa Suraj, a very notable fiction writer. Can we have a huge round of applause?
To mark the beginning of LitFest 24, we shall now proceed with the lighting of the lamp. I would like to call upon Sri M.J. Akbar, Ms. Devika Chopra, Ms. Shilpa Suraj, Dr. Kakoli Sen, Dr. Satya Prasad, and Mr. Chahat Mishra.
It is a distinct privilege to introduce Dr. Kakoli Sen, the Dean of School of Business. Can we have a huge round of applause for her? Her academic vigor and practical insights have a significant hand in shaping the future business leaders here at Woxsen University. I would now like to invite ma'am to the dais to please share and address the gathering.
Thank you. It's working? A very good morning to our guests here today and to all of you, including all our faculty members and the team members for this event. This is one of its first kind of event that we are holding at Woxsen. We are calling it LitFest, but it's a little different from the LitFest that you must have seen and experienced earlier. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Reading, according to me, is the cheapest mode of travel. While reading a book, you can transport yourself across continents, across time zones. You can get into a particular character or characters and see and experience it yourself. So reading is a joy that cannot be explained at all. I'm sure there are plenty of you here who read and experience that joy every now and then. Writing is a skill of another level. So writing is, when you write, then you are a storyteller. You have a story in your mind, and that you are putting together for all others to read and enjoy and experience. And every reader experiences it in their own manner. They relate with some of the characters, some of the stories. They always think, okay, this is something that I also experienced. Oh, I'd never thought about it like that. So every time somebody reads a book, there is a new experience to enjoy, new things to relate to. What we've done here today, of course, we have our distinguished guests today who will talk about their own writing journey. Some of them you can see here. And they will also talk about how they went through it, what happened, and a little bit more about the book. If time allows, they may read a little bit from the book. You can always request our guests to do so. And then we have 2 talks, which will also, where our authors and our guests will share their journey and thoughts about those ideas. But very importantly, one more section that we've added is, at Woxsen, we encourage our faculty members to write, to read and write, and share with our own students. So we put together some of our internal authors who are also faculty members, who put together books of different ideas. So you will have a faculty who's written about animals, somebody who's written about a state in Orissa, somebody who's written about different areas of management, and so on. So we've invited some of them to come and talk about their own books. I'm sure you've seen them writing on the LinkedIn, but here is an opportunity to get up close and personal with them and understand from them what their journey was, what their thought process was, and how do they relate and bring this to you. So the day is fraught with a lot of activities as well. As students, you can participate in different literary activities. You can take guidance from our guests here today and have a great day today. Thank you, and I look forward to enjoying the day with you. Thank you.
I'm sure everyone here loved it when you said reading is the cheapest way of traveling. Thank you so much for addressing the audience, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Chahat Mishra, the Head of International Relations and Strategic Development, Woxsen University. Not to miss out that he's an award-winning lifestyle coach who has also been presented with the Young Achievers Award 2021 for his outstanding professional achievement. Mr. Mishra will share how reading can equip you with the knowledge, confidence, and communication skills you need to succeed on a global scale. I would like to call upon Mr. Chahat Mishra on the dais.
All right, so good morning, everyone. I would extend my warmest welcome to our distinguished guests present here today. Our chief guest, Shri M.J. Akbar, former Minister of State for External Affairs of India, and a veteran journalist, an author. We will uncover more about that during the day, where we will talk more about his books as we move along. I am also very delighted to welcome our guests of honor, Ms. Devika Chopra, news editor and anchor of NewsX, my colleague Shilpa Sulaj, notable fiction writer, and I'm sure we will get to know her works as well during the LitFest. A warm welcome to the deans, the faculty, the students and everyone present here, and to the media, of course. The topic that has been given to me is from bookshelves to boardrooms, and how self-improvement can lead towards creating a very strong personal brand. I would not take much time on that, but I would try to relate to the topic of why reading is essential and how it would lead us to become more confident citizens. We are living in exciting times where people don't like to spend time on reading newspapers anymore, sadly. We are a generation that likes to have in-shots on our mobile phones to get the shortest glimpses of what's happening around us. So that's where we are. That's where the country, fortunately or unfortunately, is moving towards. But just think about it. Every book we read, every story that we absorb, every lessons that we learn sort of adds on to creating a personal brand story. And how do we do that? Reading of books is one side of the story, but what do we do after reading the books is more critical. Are you applying the daily lessons that you get after reading the books is also the question. We're all very moved by people like the notable public speakers that the nation has produced. For example, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, for example, and we are talking in the LitFest today, so to have a mention of him, I think also is critical. I know for a fact that many of you look up to him as an icon, especially in when you look at public speaking as a passion. But what is more important is somebody like him reads 6 to 7 books a week. This is a fact which I discovered after my personal interaction with him 2 years back. So reading is still important, and why turning the pages is ever more important, because you get different perspectives, whether it is getting to know the leadership styles of different world leaders, or getting to understand negotiation strategies from business books, or we are talking about what the world across different economies, the challenges that the economies are facing. We get to read all of that, but again, is the percolation happening down right to the communities, to the marginal, to the communities that needs more awareness about it? And it is more of an interconnected world, but I would say it's a world that provides umpteen opportunities for networking, right? So when youth leaders like you who would emerge after the next couple of years, when you would step into the corporate field, you would understand the power of networking and what reading books does to you in shaping your personal brand. When you step into the boardrooms and start having conversations with business leaders, CXOs, and start taking decisions after a couple of years, you will understand how it shapes your personal narratives, right? And how your conversations with other people get enriched. So I think that is something which we need to keep in mind. Another thing which I wanted to mention before I conclude is, it
transcending of borders. Let us admit the fact that irrespective of whether you are in India or in anywhere in European Union or in the Americas or anywhere in the world, if you read about a particular fiction or a non-fiction book, you know, understanding what people have to opine about different forms of, you know, maybe stories, different literary figures you come across when you read these books. I think what is more critical is you try to understand cultures.
Understanding of cultures is very critical through the power of reading, and that is still relevant. I know we would love to still read in shots. I keep taking the name of in shots because that's what is most popular now, but I know for a fact that we like to read very concise news. I think we have stalwarts like Mr. M.J. Akbar today, who has contributed to a great extent nationally to news dailies like The Telegraph, The Hindu, and of course other news journals where his works are still featured. So when you start reading these articles, your horizons, your way of looking at life opens up, and we don't live anymore in silos. So that again is critical. We don't want to live in silos. We don't want to live in a bubble world. We want to live, collaborate, and sort of move forward by understanding what perspectives are still relevant across economies and how do we still learn from that and move forward. I would just like to conclude with a very powerful quote by Carl Sagan, and it has moved me. It has moved me, and therefore today morning I am sharing this with you. He very famously said, "Books are like seeds. Books are like seeds. They can lie dormant for centuries. They can lie dormant for centuries and then flower in the most unpromising soil." Books are like seeds. They can lie dormant for centuries and then flower in the most unpromising soil. Even if you still are not very passionate towards reading, I would say it is not too late. Understand what is your calling, what is the kind of books that you like to read. Start just one book at a time, complete it, and then move towards the other book. Of course, look at some of the self-help books. I know for a fact that today, countries are also facing issues of mental health. I know it's important to read about those as well, but try and make a list of priorities in terms of what are the kind of books that you want to read. Without reading, I think we cannot continue to adapt, or otherwise we just perish, right? So with that, I would just like to conclude and pass it on to the MC and wish all of you a great networking event plus a successful LitFest. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to our partners, makers of milkshake and Juicy Apes. Thank you.
Now we all know reading is one thing that is definitely not bad even in excess. Thank you so much for addressing the audience, sir. Moving forward, it is an honor to welcome Shri M.J. Akbar, a distinguished statesman and a prolific writer whose words have inspired generations. Being an Indian journalist and a politician, he has also served as the Minister of State for External Affairs. He has authored several excellent non-fiction books, including the biography of Jawaharlal Nehru, titled Nehru, The Making of India. Some of his recent books include Kashmir Behind the Veil, Gandhi, A Life in 3 Campaigns, and Lali Sahib and the Black Zamindar. I'm sure after hearing to this introduction, all of you are excited to hear his keynote address that promises to illuminate our path forward in the complex landscape of global affairs and literature. Join your hands in welcoming on the dais Shri M.J. Akbar.
colleagues in this difficult world of writing are academicians or academics of this very new but already very distinguished institution, and most of all friends sitting here this morning. I hope I was not here a little misled about the subject, since the subject given to me was about India's arrival and the making of a new world order. But this much I can begin with. You are all at an age where the future, your own future, your collective future, is more important to you than the past. You are at the beginning of a journey, and the whole point of a journey is uncertainty. This much I can tell you as someone who has made more than one journey. It's very difficult to find the future without knowledge of the past. Second, just a small tip on reading. When you read, please do not skim. There is no point in reading a book a day. It's far more important to understand a book a week or understand a book a month. It doesn't matter. What matters is how much is knowledge that you have absorbed, because it is through that knowledge that you are going to find your own future. Talking about the future, I would like all of you to do a little experiment. Stand on the edge of a decade and predict, make your wildest prediction about what will happen in the decade, and then just check if what happens actually comes true. I ask you to make this experiment because you are also standing on the edge of your decade into your own future. As the old saying goes, whoever made a New Year's wish had never met God. Go back a century. Don't have to do it only for this. In 1910, I dare anyone to predict that there would be a world war in 1914. In 1920, I dare anyone to predict that there would be a Great Depression in America which would destroy the international economy. In 1930, I dare anyone to predict that there would be the rise which would spread all across the world. Who is going to look and tell you that these are the horrors of World War II which are going to come in, and this is the number of millions of Jews who are going to be, killed in concentration camps by a fascist regime? In 1940, who is going to tell you that in 7 years' time India is going to be free? No one in his senses is going to tell you that. Who in 1950 is going to say that a nuclear war is going to loom like a dark shadow upon all our lives? Who in 1960, and so on and so forth. Let me just bring you a little to ahead. In 1990, who is going to predict, let's say 1960, now bring it back to argument that in 1962 there will be a war with China which will set us back and perhaps expose us. In 1970, are you going to predict that we an emergency in 6 years' time, 5 years' time? Or in 1980, that by 10 years' time, India will be forced, yes, that's 30 years ago, India will be forced to send all its gold as collateral for a foreign role, for foreign exchange. The only thing that we have really that can be confident about the future is that we don't know what is going to happen in the future. Lesson number 2, and this works for individuals as well as for collective reality. It's a line from one of my favorite writers, Ernest Hemingway, which is, decline comes gradually, almost imperceptibly, and then suddenly. While you are moving through life, just remember that. You're also entering a world which once again is seeking a new definition of order. It's not really a new world order, it's a new definition of order. Because order is something that all civilized societies seek, and quite often through centuries attain. History does not measure time in days or weeks. History measures time in centuries. And therefore, when we try and understand the past that we have inherited and the future that is going, you'll be surprised. I am almost sure, I can't be totally sure, that the beginning of the new world order that you are looking forward, that you're looking towards, and you will have to manage, began in 1918. Why did it begin in 1918? Because the First World War began as a conflict between European powers for the control of Europe and the world's resources. But when it ended in the end of an era. And what was that era? The age of empires. The greatest empires had started crumbling in India and China in the 18th century, but the Indian empires and the Chinese empires were replaced by British imperialism and European imperialism. After 1918, we saw the emergence of something that has become the fundamental building block of the future, which is the rise of the nation state. The Second World War completed the process. And the Second World War ended the age of European imperialism. 1918 and 1919, at the risk of boring you to death, I am to mention two names, which I don't know whether they are in the in-shots that you mentioned or not. But two names emerged exactly at the same time, Gandhi and Lenin. Both offered a view and a vision of the world and how to create a new world order. Lenin's vision of a world order based on upheaval of the existing order collapsed by 1990 with the end of the Soviet Union. Gandhi's has proved more sustainable. But why? Gandhi is not understood, and very often Gandhi is deliberately misunderstood. What was Gandhiji's greatest achievement? Gandhi's greatest achievement was not the end of the British Empire. Trust me, or British colonialism began in India and ended in India. After India's freedom, it could not survive in the world for more than 30 years. But what was Gandhi's greatest achievement? It was not the liberation of India from the British, it was the liberation of Indians from fear. Once Gandhi had liberated us from fear, the great mighty British Empire upon which the sun had never set could not last more than 20-25 years. And what was its thesis? Please remember the thesis, as because it is going to be vitally important to you wherever you are and whatever you do. His analysis made in 1908 in Hind Swaraj, the British had not conquered us because they were strong. The British conquered India because we had become weak. And that is the most important thing that we have to understand as we build our country for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The one thing we have to eliminate is weakness. And by the way, by weakness, I don't mean that you got to go out and learn kickboxing from television. Right? The only weakness that you have is the fear of self-confidence. Your absence of self-confidence and the absence of knowledge. What is the secret of success? There is only one secret of success, and that is knowledge. All societies, all nations, all communities which have the knowledge advantage move ahead. If you don't have the knowledge advantage, you must understand the meaning of imperialism and what it did to us. In 1750, I mean, I'm not expecting you to immediately after this rush out and order millions of copies of Dulali Sahib, but I will quote from it in order to explain what is the meaning and what are the consequences of weakness. In 1750, 7 years before the Battle of Plassey, which is the beginning of British rule, India had 24% of world manufacturing output. One good out of 24. That, I am proud to say, is not a statistic which has emerged out of the government of India. It is a statistic which I found in a book written by a Yale professor, right, The Rise and Fall of Nations. 1750, and China had 30%. Britain had less than 2%. By 1947, by the 1920s actually, India had become 2% and Britain had become 23%, 24%. That is the meaning of imperialism. What is the meaning of imperialism? The meaning of imperialism is millions of Indians dying of starvation. That is the meaning of imperialism. Do you know? Do you want me to prove it? Please go borrow this book. I deliberately put pictures of Indians, starving Indians, when the first picture started getting taken in 1880. You won't believe it. You won't be able to stop your tears if there is any heart left in you. Imperialism is not just another word in the English language, a word with too many syllables. It is a word which actually destroyed and killed your grandparents and great-grandparents. It was personal. The first British, rains used to fail even before the British arrived. So what did the Indian rulers do? The Indian rulers did something very simple. It's all there in the Jahangirnama in case you want to read. They would draw a line across famine affected everywhere and open khichdi buckets, serving khichdi, so 1 meal a day so you could survive. What did the British do? Warren Hastings, after the famine of 1768, he wrote back to the board of directors that not only, the average amount of remittance at that time was something in the region of 700,000, 800,000 pounds. During famine, he had collected 5 million pounds a year by using violence. That was the meaning. And that continued right through British rule. Not regrettably, you will not find these facts in the histories written by Cambridge University and Oxford University, nor by the academics whose loyalties are there than in their own land. Just to change the mood a bit, because I'm in serious danger of becoming too serious even for my own self. One of the most important exploited the poor and the peasantry as much as anyone else. But they had a concept of responsibility to the praja, which prevented matters from going extreme. And I tell you, there was one other important bridge. It was a psychological bridge, but a very important one. The ruler and the ruled and the subject could laugh together. Indians and the British laughed at each other. They never laughed with each other. Now, the whole Akbar-Birbal syndrome doesn't have to be actually factual in order to be true. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. It was a relationship which was created to show that there were times at which the subject had a right to tell the emperor where the emperor got off. So I'll tell you one story, one from there and one of Tenali Rama, to tell you that the equation existed across cultures, across realms, across kingdoms. So there was an instance where one day at the court for dinner brinjal was served, and the emperor Akbar didn't like what he was served, and he said, "Ye kahan se aaya hai?" And Birbal immediately rushed in and said, हाँ जहाँपना ये कहाँ से आया है, पता नहीं आपको कैसे दिया जाता है, ये तो दोज़ख में भी, that means in hell also they never serve brinjal. How it entered your palace, I can't understand. You must sack the chef and have his head cut off. Anyway, so the story ended, and 4 weeks later again brinjal appeared, and this time it was delicious. So Birbal started praising him, and Akbar reminded him, "Arey Birbal, 3 weeks ago you were abusing this vegetable." So Birbal turned around and told him, "Your Majesty, you are my emperor, not the brinjal." So it's a point of telling the emperor, right, exposing the hypocrisy of power. So Tenali Rama, one day, the king, very famous, what was the king? Vijayanagara, yeah, Krishnadeva. So Krishnadeva Raya was sitting and he sees Tenali Rama very busy making a list. And he says, "What is list that you're making?" And he says, No, sir, I can't show this to you. This is, no, please forgive me," and so on and so forth. And he turns around and says that, "No, it's an order. You have to show me the list." He says, "Sir, Your Majesty, I am making the list of the biggest fools in your kingdom." He says, "All right, let me see." He says, "No, I can't show it to you." He says, "Why?" "Because your name is at the top." So he said, "Why is my name at the top?" He says, "But yesterday there was these Arab traders who had come in selling horses. And you gave them 5,000 dinars. He said, "Yes, of course. They were the best Arab horses. That's their market price. Why should I not pay what is their due?" He said, No, that was not right. But you paid them 5,000 dinars in advance for the next set of horses. So he said, "Yes." So Tenali Rama started laughing. And he says, "What do you mean? They've taken the money and they won't bring the horses for me? Can they insult me like this? I'll prove it to you that they will bring the horses." So Tenali Rama turned around and said, "In that case, I'll cut off your name from the top of the list of fools and put theirs." The relationship of laughter, with the British, we had only Kataksh, the laughter of cynicism. This is the difference between ruler and ruled. But where have we reached in 2022? What exactly is the new world order about, and why you are the privileged generation which, if you get your act right, you could be in the leadership or in the front rank of a changing world. Trust me, we were not. We were only in the front rank of changing is the most important element of change. And what precisely is the reason why India is going to be in the forefront of change? Because of one word, modernity. Now, let me first explain that please, modernity is not about the clothes you wear. Wearing fewer clothes does not make you modern. You are most welcome to wear whatever you want, right? But wearing more clothes or fewer clothes is a question of taste. It's not a question of modernity. Neither is technology a symbol of modernity. Technology is only the natural advance of societies, an advance which began with the wheel. And by the way, it will not end with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is only another chapter in human creativity. I have absolutely no idea why people are so frightened about what they have themselves created. Frankenstein is getting absolutely appalled by his monster. The story has been written before, and doubtless the story will be written again. The reason why we are entering a modern age is because modernity is defined by 4 principles. Number 1, you can't be a modern nation without freedom. And freedom means democracy. Freedom means the right to tell the king that he may be right or wrong, but I have the right to criticize. In my more wilder moments, I extend this right. I said freedom is not the right to speak sense. Even dictators will allow you to speak sense. Freedom is probably the right to speak nonsense. Yes, as long as the nonsense is not personal invective. Freedom is the right of conscience. Number 2, most important, you can't be a modern state without equality of faith. The right to believe in whatever you want to believe as a personal faith. This includes the right to be an atheist. Most welcome. But the state cannot tell me whether, I am a Muslim or I am a Hindu. Before the state, it doesn't matter. And those who practice the politics of religion, of whichever, basically are not modern. By the way, by the principles of democracy and the principles of faith equality, I think that is really the best term in this context. By the principles of faith equality, China may be a successful country, but China is not a modern country. And China's contradictions will come and destroy what they have achieved. And it will happen in your lifetime, it doesn't happen in mine. What do I mean by faith equality? I'm sure what I'm trying to tell you is relevant not just to Delhi and Chandni Chowk, but may be relevant even to Hyderabad. If you want to understand India, don't listen to what the political people are saying. Get up early in the morning, and if you can be there in Ramzan, all the better. You get some good food to eat. Get up early in the morning, before 4 o'clock, before Fajr, and go to Chandni Chowk. The first day, every day of my country begins with the Azan. Every single day of modern India begins with the Azan, followed closely by the bells of the Hanuman temple, followed closely by the part of the Gurdwara right there in this, and followed by the bells of St. Stephen's. Nobody deliberately created it. It was sui generis. It was part of how Indians saw themselves and behaved. Nobody has ever interrupted these, and nobody can. The day this is interrupted, India will be badly wounded. And that is the India that we have to protect. Third, you cannot be a modern nation without gender equality. This gender emancipation is not sufficient. There has to be gender equality. You have to forget masculinity as an advantage, because actually it is not. If knowledge is going to be the spur of the future, then knowledge has no gender. As simple as that. I'm being logical. I'm not being partial. The mind has no gender, and hence any state which doesn't understand it, that state has no future. Number 4, in the context of what we are doing in our country, poverty. Any state which has poverty cannot be a modern state. Today, hopefully without sounding partisan, let me just offer a brief glimpse into what we are witnessing today in terms of election. The real reason why people are, I believe, I don't know what the results would say, are re-electing the Prime Minister is because 800 million people for the last 4 years have been assured of continuous, regular supply of food. In our society, let's remember one thing, in our society, man may be still the principal bread earner, but the bread provider of the family is a woman. It is a woman whose responsibility it is to look after the family. And it is the woman, really, today, who has been rescued by this program. And it's no longer poverty alleviation. You know, the phrase exists in our constitution. Every government is obliged by law to alleviate poverty. Alleviation of poverty is no longer an option, elimination of poverty. And the real elimination of poverty lies in improving the quality of life of the poorest of the poor. So if you give them food, if you give them shelter, if you give them toilet facilities, if you give them water, the radical change in their lives cannot be described in the English language. It's that kind of change, and that is how important it is. People very often ask, and I'm sure this is part of your, what is the difference between India and Pakistan? There is not much difference between Indians and Pakistanis, by the way. We are the same people, similar culture, right? Same inheritance, same weaknesses, same faults. Everyone who goes to Pakistan is always overwhelmed by the hospitality. Of course, we are hospitable people. That's how we treat our guests. The guest is an honored entity in the history of Indian culture, everywhere. The difference is that we are a modern nation and they are not, because they are trapped in theocracy. The moment you make religion into the basis of your state and your people, you have basically locked yourselves out of the 21st century. And that's really is the the new world order. I hope I have not taken too much time. The new world order also begins because of something I referred to vaguely. For something new to begin, the old has to collapse. The collapse of the old order began in 1990 with the collapse of one of the two pillars that had held up the world after Second World War, America and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's collapse, widely advertised and true, because communism as an idea collapsed. Everything, you know, I think I heard a mention about reading and writing books. Reading and writing, you know, writing does not begin with the pen. Writing begins in the mind. If it's not up there, your pen will scratch nothing. The communism collapsed. That is why the Soviet Union was dismembered. The idea that held things together. Empires, the idea it held geographies together. The idea of empire collapsed, the geography split. The idea of the communism collapsed, the geography split. China saved itself not by reinventing communism, but by abandoning communism. I remember Deng's favorite phrase in 1989-90, I don't care about the color of the cat as long as it catches mice. Don't give me Leninism and Marxism. Just tell me whether these ideas create an economy. So, in the 1990s, those who read books at that time will also understand that it resulted in huge American triumphalism, symbolized by Francis Fukuyama's book, The End of History. What did he mean by the end of history? That means there were no many worlds left to conquer. The American idea had conquered the world, and this would be the future. The American idea could not survive. I mean, not the American idea, sorry, but American triumphalism could not survive terrorism. 9/11 came and shattered American confidence. Afghanistan came. 20 years later, we know what happened in Afghanistan. Iraq came, and Iraq created an absurdity. The American belief, or I think the Western belief, that you could protect strategic space without employing or risking the lives of troops. The trauma of Iraq was so strong and Afghanistan was so strong. Anyway, to come to a very, to keep it within the framework of our present speak or talk, the American ability to control the world began to teeter, began to wobble. And then, of course, an adversary had to rise. Because whatever you might say about the Russians today like Putin for only one reason, and that is they are not ready to accept defeat. You know, you must understand the meaning of defeat. Defeat is not being vanquished. Defeat is, or not surrender, defeat is accepting defeat. Until you accept defeat, you are not defeated. You can always fight another day. So you can see the revival of Russia, and you know his favorite quotation, I believe, is from Lenin: probe with a bayonet and keep probing if you find mush. It's useful to remember in life, whatever you do. I'm reminded of the exact analogy for the timelines in which we are at the moment. A very obscure English poet, I think justifiably obscure, Matthew Arnold. But one statement of his, one line of his is been a kind of guideline, which is one world is dead and the other is not born. We are in that embryonic phase of history. But believe me, you who are today in a very good institutions, you are very fortunate, trust me. Don't misinterpret or underestimate your fortune. I don't know, maybe there are 150 students here. For you 150 students, there are 150,000 outside waiting to get in. waste away or frit away the advantage that has been given to you for reasons beyond your understanding or your control. Give back to that society which has given you a place in this institution. But you will find within 10 years a world in which our country will be at the hem of affairs, will be on the high table of the management of the world. We are already getting there. The signs are visible, particularly if you write history. You can see it. And you will be the first generation which will reap the benefits of an India at the high table of world affairs. This is something that our generations could only dream about. My father's generation could dream about and get freedom. Our generation could dream about and do something with that freedom, which is create the 1990s. Without the 1990s, you would not have been seeing this. You would not have been seeing Gachibowli. And the Prime Minister from this state was responsible. So you, as I said, are the first generation which will reap the great harvest of history. And that harvest of history will be a harvest of gold. Not gold measured in rupees and annas and pies and dollars and yen, but a harvest of knowledge and a harvest of contentment, and the highest form of contentment, which is achievement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your inspiring words, Shri M.J. Akbar. Can we have a huge round of applause again? Indeed, sir, you have opened our eyes to the fact that we, as a future generation of this country, have a duty to strengthen ourselves mentally. Let us all promise ourselves that we will get India back to its former glory. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Now, let's dive into a video that will show us more about our beloved Woxsen University.
It empowers, where your potential transcends borders. India to the world.
Proceeding further, I'm sure the students want to seize this invaluable opportunity to get to know more. So I would like to ask all the students to please feel free to pose your questions and contribute to an engaging dialogue. Let me also inform you guys that those inquisitive minds that are going to be asking questions today will be lucky to get a book signed by Shri M.J. Akbar. Students, those who have questions can raise their hands now. Before we continue with the question answer session, let's watch another video and then we can continue.
I felt privileged to visit Woxsen University. Woxsen University with its splendid infrastructure, really cutting edge, allowing so many young people to benefit from world-class education delivered by a very dedicated corps of professors, lecturers, the staff, the leadership also. So this was really a very interesting day also to deep dive into the future of India, a nation of the future, a vibrant engine, future engine of the world's economy.
That must have given our guests an insight about Woxsen University. I would request the guests to please take their seats on the dais. The students, those who have questions, may ask the questions now. Raise your hands.
Good morning, sir. I'd like to ask how you feel about the future of literature writing in India, as many Indian authors are winning international acclaims for their writings.
I think the question is important, but it also, if you'll pardon my saying so, there is implicit diffidence in it. India has a literary tradition which is much older. I think only the Greeks and the Persians and the Chinese civilizations have a literary tradition as strong as India's. All right, in all the four societies that I have mentioned, it was an elitist activity. Right? Knowledge as a mass fact is only a 20th century creation, but certainly it spread. The absorption of literature into mass reality was the function of theatre rather than of writing. But 20th century saw this revolution. Right? What am I hinting at? When we talk of India, we must not get trapped into English. There is vast worlds of Indian writing outside the English language. Right? The fact that a certain number of Indian English, okay, I am very proud of the fact, or used to be at least, that my first book was published by Penguin, became an international bestseller. Siege Within, Nehru, you mentioned, 1989, and so on and so forth. But the reality of Indian literature lies in its relationship with the Indian people. And that fact has been an immersive experience of our society all through. All through. What we really should worry about is why the various literatures of India cannot find a paying audience. Why have we stopped buying books? The day we stop buying books, you can't grasp the future, because your understanding will be limited by what I had called the skimming through a book experience rather than reading a book experience. Right? You go to school here. What do you go to school for? You go to school to improve your understanding of existing knowledge and new knowledge. Without that understanding, your presence here is meaningless. Books are a great contribution to understanding. They open new worlds through the journeys that were mentioned.
Good morning, sir.
We'll do that later.
Good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's a big delight to meet you in person. My name is Maz, and the question that I have for you is, throughout your many careers in politics, journalism, and writing, what were the major challenges that you faced, and what have you done or learned to overcome them throughout your many years of experience?
Very perceptive question. I'll tell you a very short answer to a long question. All challenges of life are internal, and you have to deal with them. In writing books, there is something called a writer's block. It's not your hand which has been blocked, it's your mind. My process, since I think some of you may be interested in just another experience, my experience may not have any relationship to how you would like to go ahead. I never begin anything. I never put a sentence to paper, the first sentence to paper, without having thought through how I will end it. The pregnancy is far, far longer than the delivery. Right? And the pregnancy of an idea, how to see it through. How does the embryo become a baby, a child, a creation? Right? That's the closest, in fact, a man can get to the wondrous experience that a woman has the privilege of, which is birth. And unless you get through that, understand precisely how you're going to end something, never begin it. In fact, my suggestion, never even begin a job until you know where you want to reach. Second, a tip in terms of form. Form is very important, because many good minds, many powerful ideas are lost because they don't understand the meaning of a straight line. They wander. Right? Instead of going to Hyderabad, you suddenly discover you're in Pune. Why? Because your route map that you're following, right, is a maze, is not a straight line. Principle of the good old Greek Aristotle. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. A book has a beginning, a middle, and an end. A chapter has a beginning, a middle, and an end. A page has a beginning, middle, and an end. A paragraph has a beginning, middle, and an end. A sentence has a beginning. Once you follow the logic and discipline of that, you will find writing falls into place.
Good morning, sir. You've written several non-fiction books, including the biography of Jawaharlal Nehru. I would like to ask you to describe in your own words what you think the impact of Jawaharlal Nehru's writings have been to Indian literature, as well as to the effect it's had on the making of India to our young audience here.
In fact, the title of my book was The Making of India. And Jawaharlal's contribution was immense, because the most important part of the birth of a democracy, it's not simply the birth of a nation state. Now, you must remember 1947, we were the first country to be liberated from European colonization. So what we did was also implicitly a template. So we then had the extraordinary courage. What courage of that generation which Gandhi brought into the forefront. We didn't look at ifs and buts. We gave ourselves the most idealistic constitution that is possible. Under the leadership, but under the co-leadership also of Ambedkar and all colleagues. A constitution that through the wreckage and the debris of British rule, we said we will still have the courage to believe in democracy. We will have the courage to believe in equality and so on and so forth. I won't labor these points. But saying something and making it happen are two very different things. Dreaming about Woxsen is quite different from making it actually happen. It requires management. It requires conviction to sabke paas hoga. But where is the management that is necessary to turn that idea into architecture? And the architecture of democratic India, which is our core asset, was created by Jawaharlal Nehru. This does not mean that he did not make mistakes. He made significant mistakes. Two I can think of right away. Vis-a-vis Kashmir. Right? There is no, in fact, this is another fact that I'm just writing an essay on that. We think of Gandhi as non-violent. Of course he believed in non-violence, but when Pakistan invaded Kashmir, the man who went publicly and said the Indian army has to fight was Gandhi. He said the state has to defend itself against aggression. And it will do it through the instruments of state. He said this state cannot lie down and say it's being non-violent. So, in Kashmir, going to the United Nations, Gandhiji objected strongly. Don't go to the United Nations. Keep it a bilateral matter, which is where we've reached now. Number two, why the ceasefire had to be declared when we were on the brink of pushing the Pakistan invaders, it's never been explained. There's no record of why. Because, everybody knows the answer. So, there were many mistakes, but no man is infallible. And we cannot ignore a man's contribution to the history of his nation because he also had faults. The greatest fault was ignoring defense and security for a decade, and then inevitably China happened. This is a non-book question.
You'll have to wait. Sit down again. So my question is, just before the previous question, when you're answering that, you have to start with the end in mind, which is absolutely true. For most of the things, we try and do that. But when it comes to the creative arts, like writing and maybe creating something new, how far do you think we should let it evolve as we go along and think about and reflect? And maybe I'm sure when unless you're narrating something which happened as it is and you're sharing, what role do you think, the creative flow and the evolving of thoughts have in writing, in different kinds of writing? Thank you.
Writing without discipline becomes an exercise in dreaming. Right? You're putting things really on paper which never add up to a whole. So I don't think we can ever remove discipline. I mean, forget writing, sculpture. Can you look at the temples that we've created? Look at Taj Mahal. Whoever created that knew exactly how it was going to end. The pyramids were created by people who knew exactly what the degree of the angle would be at the top. They could not have started without knowing it. None of the great works of genius, Michelangelo, right, Ajanta Ellora, Konark, every single, one of the greatest facts about Indian creativity is that Indians never put a signature to their creation. Right? Unlike Western art. Right? Here, imagine the courage to remove your ego, and that too by an artist. Who created the Taj Mahal? Who created Konark? Who created Ajanta? Who created Ellora? Who created the temples of Tamil Nadu? We all believed that this inspiration was part of what we gave back to society from the society that had given us the ability to do so. It's a remarkable form of genius to which I can't easily find it. Who created the pyramids? We only know the name of the emperor. The emperors didn't haul those stones. So, all I'm saying is that, and I hope that you carry this message, do not begin anything without the disciplined knowledge of knowing where you are going. Don't leave home without a ticket to somewhere.
Now, I would like to invite the students who have asked questions forward to avail the golden opportunity of getting a book signed by the man himself, Shri M.J. Akbar. Can we have a huge round of applause?
Why don't I just write the name of the person?
Also.
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you, sir. My name is Mas, M-A-A-Z-Khan. Great honor, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to spell it?
C-H-A-R?
V-W. C-H-A-R. V-W. V-W-E. Thank you, ma'am.
It's Arya Maker, A-R-Y, A-R-Y-A, Maker, M-E-K-A. Last name, M-E-K-A. M-E-K-A. Yeah. It was a pleasure. So can we have a picture?
Can we have a huge round of applause? Everyone, please seat.
Yeah, works.
Everyone, whoever's leaving.
Really?
on unmasked leadership. We invited her
Okay.
to share her experience.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Acha, you are
Where is the photo?
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Would love to interact with you later.
Yeah, we are here after us.
Now it is time for us to commence an intimate fireside chat that will give us the privilege of delving into the life of the trailblazer himself, Shri MJ Akbar. Can we have a huge round of applause?
Before we get recorded, so these are a couple of questions.
Alright, so just before we get recorded, I would urge people in the audience to get the movements restricted. Lasya and the team, organizing team, if you are listening to this, please restrict the movements, and all your mobile phones need to be on silent or switched off mode. We are going to be recorded for this fireside chat, so please bear with us for the next few minutes. I know we have an interesting lineup of events after this as well, but yes, I think if we are ready from the technical side. Alright, so a very warm welcome everyone to the Woxsen LitFest. It's great to see so many of you gathered today for our first ever LitFest, and we're very honored to have our first chief guest for this fireside chat, Shri MJ Akbar, the former Minister of State for External Affairs of India, a veteran journalist and a prolific author. So as we move along in this conversation, we will discuss life, career, and maybe a couple of books which describes the kind of work which Mr. Akbar has presented to the nation. My very first question to you, Mr. Akbar, is if we were to talk about your journey right from journalism to politics and then to becoming an author, how do you see you transitioning from these roles, and what were the key challenges, or I would say maybe some of the hurdles that you faced towards becoming one of the best-known authors now?
No, there is no hurdle in authorship, because books really are the end product of an investigation which begins in the mind. And my investigations began almost inevitably with an examination of one's personal family, one's personal self, not through the prism of individual lives, specifically my parents' lives or the community lives, not until later, but through the prism of why precisely a vitally important Indian community, the Indian Muslims, had between 1940 or 1939, maybe 38 and 47, collectively committed or written what I described in my first book, India Siege Within, as the longest suicide note in history. From becoming first-class citizens of United India Why did we choose vivisection? Why did we choose partition? Right? A completely self-destructive idea. What was it in the rhetoric of a man who really converted politics from personal angst, Muhammad Ali Jinnah? And this examination has been one of the continuing investigations. So there was the siege within, then there was a book, Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the making of India, but then it comes up right up to the but Gandhi's Hinduism, the struggle against Jinnah's Islam. What was it that Gandhi found unified within a philosophy, a shared philosophy? And why today I think there is deep regret, unexpressed perhaps, at the events of 1947, but also a recognition that nothing much can be done about it. There was one book, Blood Brothers, which became an examination of my grandfather. My grandfather from Hajipur, a victim of famine, in a British-invented famine, lost his family in famine, came to a jute mill town in Bengal, and how he built his life there. He was a Hindu. His name was Prayag Singh. And the circumstances in which he converted, it's all down there, absolutely. I remember when Blood Brothers was published, and I'll tell you just two stories about it. One, someone asked me over maybe a fireside chat, that is it fact or fiction? I said, I don't know, I only know it's the truth. Whether we take the truth and use it and create the form of quote-unquote fiction around it. But fiction, unless it addresses truth. And then the second story is about its release in Pakistan. And the huge controversy arose because one of the sentences in my book, which my father told me, he was a very simple man living in a very small town. For him, his mohalla was his world. And I once asked him about Pakistan. And he, please understand that he had no great British wit or anything. He's just total Indian in his. So he says, what is wrong with Pakistan? There are too many Muslims. He had no problem with Muslims per se, but he missed the mixed culture of the environment in which he had been born. It is our shared culture. It is everybody. Why do I want an exclusive culture? There is so much more to be gained out of sharing a culture than in locking yourself up in an ice box.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akbar. I think that gives us an insight as we move along in this conversation. We have a lot of our journalism students also in this audience, and my question to you would be, as you wanted to pursue the field of journalism and become a journalist, and quite an accomplished one as you moved along in your journey, what were the kind of endeavors that you took initially? If one, for example, from the audience would want to pursue this career full-time, so what would be your advice to them if they were to take up this career?
You have to, in order to, there's a difference between being a journalist who gets a very good salary for being very good, as I hope all of you are, and all of you will become. And there are people who want to find out that this model, this mold served for one generation. What is the requirement and the need of the next one? Look, a generation is not 1 year classroom. A generation is a time span. But every say 30 years, 40 years, 30 probably, time moves faster these days. The requirements and interests of the young people sitting here are vastly different from the people who would sit in a similar place in 2000. And certainly different from, I was 19 years old when I got my first job. Not because I wanted a job at the age of 19, but because I had no option except to get a job and make some money. Right? There's fair levels of hopelessness on the Indian economic scene at that time. So we all wanted to, get bigger degrees. Some of us couldn't afford to, but it doesn't matter. I don't see it as a positive advantage. I merely see it as something that happened. And make the best of your situation. So here, unless you can visualize it, how precisely, I'll give you one small example. What precisely was the difference between Sunday and which we started in 76? Is that Sunday decided that here was a first generation after partition which wanted to know a story in depth. In Telegraph, what did we do? We took first, turned our attention to creating a wider range, bringing the world to India as much as we thought of taking the world, India to the world. Then we said that, why should a story become an exercise in the journalist's ability to write endless reams? Turn the same set of facts into 3 stories. It's good communication. So the laws of communication actually challenged the rules that journalists had created for themselves. So that was different. Number 2, I remember the established press, when we created a full page of leisure, including comics and games and so on and so forth. Oh, children, the children that you see, the teenagers that you see, before you know it, they're going to be the jobs that run the country. There is no audience which is not important.
Thank you very much. In fact, my next question would precisely talk about the higher educational landscape. If you look at Woxsen, for example, we define ourselves as disruptors in the higher education space. And you have served in one of the important offices in the ministry, which is the External Affairs. So in your opinion, how do you see the realm of higher education evolving, especially in India? And how is the world looking at India, especially with regard to, increased opportunities for next couple of years? So what is the plan possibly that could look like in your opinion?
One of the biggest mistakes we made, is that in our search for higher education, to create the pillars of higher education, IIMs, IITs, now Woxsen and so on, we forgot that a nation cannot move forward without lower education. Where is the mass education? Build your next set of geniuses. Or is education becoming the privilege of a small class, for which we feed more and more and more? Yes, I'm not denying the need for specialized education, of course. But why are we not expanding the pool? 1.4 billion people have, each one of them has a right to first lower education, then middle education, and then higher education. And if they have the capabilities, let them go up, let them ascend. I think this really has happened only in this century, in last 20-25 years, that we broadened the preventively of education, both through state schools and through the private sector. The liberation of education from government. Otherwise, government's monopoly in 70s, in 80s, there were people saying they are not, but not to the extent. To the extent that India was capable of. Our pace
Wired right from the day zero that you need to get an X package towards the end of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. However, if on the contrary, if you see in India, right from the parents to the students to the faculties to everyone, I think we are all pushing our students, pushing our kids that, this is what you need to achieve. If you don't, you're a failure. And that is something what is keeping, I think, our students worried. And then again comes the issue of mental health and the kind of challenges. So maybe if you have some thoughts on that as well.
All that will have in your aspirational is an evolutionary word. Aspiration doesn't mean the same thing in 1990 as it means in 2024. Right? And what it means in 2034 is going to be very different from 2024. Today, aspiration is so attached to salary that we really have stopped thinking in other directions. And when salary alone doesn't provide the satisfaction, or whatever you were told is the benchmark of success doesn't provide the satisfaction, you have the problems that you have just mentioned. But I am absolutely sure that, look, and this is for everyone who's listening, sometimes the greatest truths are written in the simplest words. Man does not live by bread alone. Right? And I know for a fact that, the human being, when we say man, it's an old generic term for human beings. One of the reasons why the change has come in the 21st century, in fact, is because women have taken the leadership in creating the institutions that serve the needs. Their understanding of what the child needs and what is good for the child is much healthier, much more sane, and indeed much more practical than the man's knowledge. Right? And the rise of the woman as the principal decision maker in the social history of India is one of the main reasons why India is changing at a rapid pace. It is changing today, right? This fact has not been fully at the top of the ladder, but the woman at the economic bottom of the ladder. I hate the term ladder, as if people are better or worse. They are not. People are equally good everywhere. But the role of the woman at mass levels, that their vision of the future for the dream for the child. It's not the man. Men dream of themselves, for themselves. They don't dream of the next generation. It's the mother, it's the woman. And that rising role of the woman as the generational change, as the creator of this change, is really one of the most significant differences between India of this century and India of the previous centuries.
In fact, I totally agree with what you mentioned before that as well, in I think the second question where you mentioned bringing India to the world and the world to India. I think what should be more important for institutions is that you need to understand that it's not just about building your brand or building your institution. It is also more about how section 2 of this fireside chat, which is going to be a rapid fire. So
I've heard of saying for my supper, but this is really...
So Mr. Akbar, the former Minister of State for External Affairs of India, are you ready for a rapid fire? And this is going to be rapid, so maybe if you could keep your responses to just one word. So my first question to you is, what would have Mr. Akbar done if he would not have been in journalism or politics?
Something useful.
Okay. One word for India.
Indian.
Okay. Print or digital?
Finding a difference between the alphabet and numerals, right, is something beyond the reach of philosophers.
Mr. Akbar, this is supposed to be a rapid fire. All right, so my next question is, one word for vision. Absolutely, I agree with that. I'll give you 5 options of countries right. Yes, and the 5th one would be the entire Middle East. So, if you could rearrange them in order of priorities in the logical sequence that you find it fit.
The question has a basic fallacy. India can never be second.
All right, so India first, and then if you could rearrange the rest.
India's interests will prioritize the answers. Our arc of neighborhood exists between the Gulf and ASEAN. This will be we are the fulcrum of this world, and we will be able, in cooperation with equal nations in this region, become the future.
Awesome. One thing that MJ Akbar is very passionate about, and perhaps the world is not aware of.
I don't know about the world, but I'm very passionate about finding a country which we were not privileged enough to have inherited.
All right. So with that, we've come to the end of the rapid fire. Thank you for those responses, and it was a pleasure having this conversation. Thank you very much, and I thank the audience for this patient listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Chad. Rapid but incisive. Chadu?
Take our seats there.
That was truly a very eventful and honestly a very interesting conversation. I'm sure everybody here was glued at the stage. Thank you so much, Shri MJ Akbar and Chahat sir. I would like to felicitate sir with a memento.
That's a small token of appreciation from Woxsen University to Mr. MJ Akbar.
Now, especially for the debunkers, I am very excited to have with us Ms. Devika Chopra. Can we have a huge round of applause? Her expertise.
So what we'll do is we have a 5-minute quick bio break. If any of you would like to go out, come back, we could resume in the next 5 minutes. So the washroom is just next door.
We'll see you all back in 5 minutes.
Can you move?
अरे भाई जितना करना है अभी कर लो maybe
So,
हाँ बोलो
like, tell me about the event and what do you think about the useful for the audience?
I think this literary festival is going to be a very important milestone. Is the journey of this great university, Woxsen, because it actually is going to be the beginning of bringing a different set of minds to the campus. The literary mind, the reading mind, the author's perspective, which is a vast world outside, or perhaps shall we say, in parallel with the academic world. When that literary world and the academic world meets, it's a creativity and a frisson which improves the campus vastly.
I have no idea. Rice in the yeah.
Presentation.
I request all the students to please be seated quickly.
You're on the can just check now and see.
I would request everyone to get back to their seats, please. And storytelling. Now, I'll give it over to...
Thank you so much. Yes. Just wanted to get up. So I hope all of you've got that quick break, and it's been a really enlightening session with Mr. MJ Akbar. A lot to learn from sir. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure hearing you. We'll just, I think, start in just a moment. But when I was invited here for a LitFest, I initially didn't understand my role per se, because I'm a journalist. And we don't really, especially TV journalists, we don't really consider ourselves to do anything with literature per se. But I guess that's where I've been proven wrong today with everything that I've heard so far. Because at the end of the day, we are storytellers. So I don't have a lot of books to my name, but I do have a lot of broadcast shows and news articles and other research to my name, and hopefully my learnings from that I'll be able to put forward in just a moment from now. You guys let me know. Deepesh will be handling by slides with me. So if we're ready to go. All right, guys, as you know, I'm Devika Chopra and I'm a journalist. If we can go across now to the first slide. In recent news, Poonam Pandey, a very famous social media personality, I'll call her, she faked her own death. We all read the article and the Instagram post as well. Some of us believed it and went into bereavement. Others were a little critical of the news. Some of us had our doubts, but a day later, Poonam posted a video of herself saying that she's alive and kicking on social media, and she wasn't a victim of cervical cancer. Her death was in fact orchestrated by her PR team to create awareness around cervical cancer. So those were the headlines for a few days. It surely took the media by storm, with most media houses choosing to believe the news and proceeding to do exactly what Poonam had intended us to do. Google data actually showed a spike in the number of people searching for cervical cancer. Media outlets started posting articles on what is cervical cancer and how you can prevent it. Right there, data from Google Trends shows a spike in the number of people in India searching for cervical cancer. And of course, Poonam Pandey on the 2nd of February, and the day after, Pandey posted her fake death news. So she managed to do what she wanted to do, which was, in a way, to grab our attention. In a world of fiction and fake news, Poonam's stunt truly touched both the viewers and also left us as consumers of news confused and angry at the tastelessness of this entire scenario. Poonam Pandey is dead, or is she? In a world where our phone beeps every minute with a notification of some media content either being fake or fictional, we as users need to discern what to believe and what to consume with more than just a pinch of salt. This controversial example bewildered the masses because while the cause was sought to be noble, one begs to question whether the ends justify the means or the means justify the end. Did Poonam have to take such a drastic step to make consumers aware of cervical cancer, or did she manage to get people to actually become aware of the fact that cervical cancer is the second most prevalent cancer amongst women and is totally treatable with just a vaccine? I'd like to ask you, as consumers of the news, was this fiction or was this fake news? If you feel that it was either, if you can just tell me by a show of hands. Do you think this was fiction or fake news? If you felt that it was either of them, just put your hands up. Fake news? Anybody who thinks that this was fiction? Okay, not too many people, but a lot of people believe that this was fake news. And that brings us to today's discussion, fake news versus fiction. Some believe fiction is events, people, and stories that are not real, but fiction could also then be described as the ability of the mind to think beyond what actually exists, to paint a picture of hopes and dreams. So if you're forced to think about it, there's fiction all around us. In some way or another, all of us end up doing what Poonam Pandey did. We try to glorify ourselves. We sometimes paint a picture that's not entirely accurate or the reality, and technically that could qualify as fiction. But fiction must be differentiated from fake news. And one of the key differences between the two is intent. Both of them are used to weave narratives and stories, but the intention of fake news and fiction is entirely different. Fiction wants you to pause and think. Good fiction actually challenges our ideas of the world and how we know it. Fiction actually shows us a world that doesn't exist and is simply a result of someone's imagination. Good fiction, in fact, leaves us sometimes amazed at the ability of the human mind to imagine. Those of you who've read Harry Potter or you've watched Game of Thrones understand where I'm coming from and where my definition of fiction is coming from. But fake news, guys, relies on something else entirely. The intention of fake news is to make you immediately react and respond. Creators of fake news want you to go into and tap into your pre-existing biases and mislead you. A lot of times fake news articles are hoping for your attention. Like this: Hillary Clinton adopts alien baby. Computer virus spreads to human. President Kovind earns 3.25 million followers on Twitter within minutes of taking over as India's 14th president. All of this was fake news. But once it's masqueraded in this format which looks a little bit newsy, looks like a newspaper, looks like a magazine, and there you have it. That becomes a viral message. But in this increasingly polarized world today, fake news is created with the intention of causing harm to the social fabric of society. In fact, the intention is to cause social disharmony, to create a fear psychosis amongst communities which can lead to violence and riots. Lives of real people are put in danger. Artificial intelligence and the ability to morph photographs and videos poses an even greater threat in this era of fake news. At the top is the headline of a reputed Indian media outlet. Top Saudi cleric's fatwa allowed husbands to eat their wives if hungry. And it comes under an article on top unusual fatwas. A day later, a magazine from Saudi Arabia puts that headline out. Saudi Grand Mufti denies fatwa allowing men to eat their wives. It took them about roughly 24 hours to come up with that clarification, but the damage was done, right? Because people had already circulated the first article. Nobody's going to wait for you to respond to it the next day. What truly happens is maybe the fatwa issue, maybe it taps into some pre-existing biases you have about some people. What's truly troubling is this. We remember that sometime back, there were 2 women in Manipur who were paraded naked. It led to nationwide outrage. Have a look at what the investigation found. TOIs say that fake news and misleading videos have played a significant role in inciting violence. The horrifying incident on May 4th where 2 women were paraded naked and assaulted in the Kangpokpi district occurred after a fake picture claiming a tribal murder in Churachandpur was circulated in Imphal Valley. So it's obvious now that fake news is really bad. But maybe it's time that we look at the problem like good doctors. We analyze what is the root cause rather than addressing just the symptoms. Why do people feel the need today to come up with fake news that could possibly harm people like you and I? We live in a fast-paced world of social media, mobile phones. There's really easy access to the internet, and there is an overload today of information, disinformation, and misinformation. And if you think economies today are run on money, you're absolutely wrong. Economies today are run on your attention and retention. It's not just the internet, we see this happening everywhere in our lives because we today want our grocery attention span of the human being is just 9 seconds today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's it. I've lost you. Data tells me I've lost your attention within 9 seconds. I mean, I'm hoping I haven't actually lost your attention. People here are listening, but that's what data tells me. Can you imagine, in 2004, a study was conducted that said that the average attention span was 2.5 minutes. A few years later, that was reduced to 75 seconds, so that's a little over a minute. Then we come a few years later, it's reduced to 45 seconds. And today, it's 8.5 seconds. Social media apps and websites, which includes media outlets, are all today wanting one thing, and that is just your attention, which is unfortunately reducing by the day. As per Time magazine, the average time a person spends on a specific website page is just 15 seconds. That's all that they have to grab your attention. While that probably works for social media influencers, for TikTokers, for Instagrammers, do you really expect to understand anything that's happening in the world in just 15 seconds? Isn't that a little obnoxious? Our reducing attention spans are forcing news agencies and media outlets to try and give you information in less than a minute. Nobody seems to have the time or the will to actually read an article that's probably going to take you 5 minutes to read. We'd much rather watch an Instagram video explaining the news to us in 60 seconds, and that's the reason why most news agencies and media outlets do not reveal today the time that is spent on their websites and social media pages. What they're actually relying upon today is something called impressions. So they will say that 10 lakh people actually visited our website this month, but how much time did they spend on that website or social media page? Nobody will reveal that because the answer, as I told you, is really scary. It's just 15 seconds. And that brings us to the second problem today, which is holding your attention. We are all guilty of criticizing people for doing all sorts of nonsense on social media, on the internet. We watch their videos, we criticize them, we comment on it, we engage with it. We just comment saying this is nonsense, this is not news. We are also guilty of loving drama and disruption in our regular day-to-day lives. You just today need to stand in the middle of the road and start a fight, and you'll have 20 people gather around you. Try doing something nice on the road, not one person will look at you. Okay? In fact, they'll probably abuse you for disrupting traffic. Today, there is also a heightened need for entertainment. So when we're done with a long day of work, none of us really want to watch something that requires us to think, right? That's why there's this genre of brainless comedies and brainless dramas that is so popular in the entertainment world. A movie that has absolutely no storyline and no real lesson, to be frank, is going to be crossing 1,000 crores in revenue, but another movie, which is about rapes of minor victims in a shelter home in Bihar, in Uttar Pradesh, will probably find some mention somewhere in a critic's article in a newspaper. The point being, today, anything that we can consume quickly and without a lot of application of our own mind is what appeals to us, is what retains our attention. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the media today is a victim of the attention and engagement economy. The rising numbers of media outlets and organizations means that they are all competing for your attention too. And we're not just competing with each other, we're also competing with her, Urfi Javed. How do I deal with that? You tell me. Honestly, if she were to be standing here today giving a lecture, I promise you the hall would be full, okay? Because you can like her, you can hate her, but you can't ignore her. And that's where we are today. But jokes apart, media is competing with an entire ecosystem of the internet, which includes social media websites and apps. Data tells us that you want masala. So what does the media do? It adapts to what you think, what it thinks you want. And so goes on the saga of clickbait headlines, because all we want is for people to come to an article, scroll for maybe 9 seconds, we add a lot of fluff at the top, and we rely on your need today for speed reading to have that article circulated further. Or better yet, start posting a lot of entertainment content, which is essentially just gossip masked as lifestyle content. In broadcast, media has resorted to these obnoxious and loud shouting matches at 9 p.m. because guess who they're competing with, right? They're competing with Big Boss. So if Big Boss is offering them shouting and drama, how else do they get your attention? Because data once again tells us that consumers switch the television channel the moment there is positive news as compared to negative news. Isn't that so telling of our own psyches today? Where have we reached? There's also a third problem. We're looking at quantity rather than quality. Almost all of us are guilty of something called dead scrolling in our phones. I want you to take out your phones either right now or later and check the average time that you spend on social media apps like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook. We're all addicted to our phones. But even as we spend more and more time surfing the internet, our reduced attention spans are actually resulting in us consuming large quantities of content. So where and how is that content being produced, and where is it coming from? We have to understand that our dead scrolling generates algorithms which makes us ripe for targeted content. You watch 5 videos of a dog or a cat on social media, and the next day it's going to show you 10 videos of a dog and a cat. The news agency, which is desperate also for your attention, is looking at what's trending, is looking at what the data is saying, what is it that people want, and suddenly, out of nowhere, I have to write an article on the top 10 dog breeds in India. Because that's what you want. So you must be thinking that as a person with now almost 7 years of experience in broadcast and print journalism, I'm standing here today shifting the blame on everyone else. Anymore. At the same time, there are certain platforms like X, which has a feature of community posting or community comments, which allows you to alter or give more information on a post that seems inaccurate or incomplete. Recently, I came across a website that didn't allow me to share an article if I didn't scroll down, right? Because they've figured out that people are just reading the headline, and quickly after reading the headline, you're just posting it on your family chat or whatever, to your friends. What you have to understand is that there is an effort to battle the perils of fake news, but none of us can do it without your help as consumers of news. The future of journalism, of circulation of information, and the means to defeat fake news, ladies and gentlemen, is in your hands, quite literally. It needs to begin with the consumer changing his demands from news and media outlets altogether. You can help break the media away from the clutches of the attention and retention economy. We can do this by first understanding that most media outlets and news agencies are run by people, right? They're mostly not for profit, but that doesn't mean that there aren't real people with real families to support, and they have to be given very real money as salaries. Unfortunately, many media outlets and news agencies today don't just want to keep burning money. So they engage in something that's easy, like PR activities and advertisements as avenues of raising funds. But advertisers rely upon your website visits and your video clicks. Because imagine, if you were to go and promote yourself somewhere, you would choose a page that has 1 lakh followers or 10 lakh impressions versus a page that has 100 followers. What you have to understand is that all of that traffic is generated through viral, gossip-worthy content. The journalist today faces a major conundrum because real stories, we are told by data, don't sell. Lifestyle content does. So while I know that I should be spending the majority of my time in trying to find you the most accurate, most reliable, most in-depth information, I should also be spending a lot of time busting fake news. I have to devote real human resource to generate content that people actually want to consume. The moment we stop our overconsumption of stories and videos about who's the richest Kardashian right now, we actually force news agencies and media outlets to focus on supplying us information that matters, that is accurate, that is detailed, and that is relevant. If you spend more time being curious about the news, about things that impact us and the world, you will see a change in the content that is being delivered to you, because the most basic law of economics, ladies and gentlemen, demand and supply, is wholly applicable to news and fake news. We also need to understand that news is ultimately a money-burning business. It will always be owned by wealthy people and business persons, but that is a reason why so many media outlets or news agencies send you pop-ups to subscribe. It will not make the media entirely independent, but maybe just enough so that we don't have to sit and worry about presenting some sort of numbers on impressions and views to potential investors. And we can take a cue from other public servants and professionals. We take really good care, right, of the 3 pillars of our democracy. The executive, your politicians, your judiciary, your bureaucrats, they all get salaries and they get a lot of other perks. Lawyers demand a very hefty fee for their service. In fact, any professional that is expected to offer a service is paid. And those that offer really critical services, like doctors, can demand a fee. But when was the last time any of us paid for our news? We say that media is the 4th pillar of our democracy. Journalists are expected to perform this selfless service and yet most of them end up living on really low salaries all their lives while working on an average 10 hours a day. So maybe next time, maybe you want to gift someone something on their birthday, on their anniversary, or maybe Holi, Diwali, when you send out those mass gifts, why don't you offer them some sort of a family subscription to a news agency, to a credible news agency? We spend hours dead scrolling on our phones watching meme after meme. But what you don't realize is that you've spent your entire evening watching at least 40 short clips on Instagram. So it's not that we don't have the time, it is just that we don't have the intent to maybe invest that time wisely. Our addiction to our phones works perfectly for social media apps. They're designed to keep us engaged and addicted. So I know the switch to consuming news that matters will not happen in a day. It will happen gradually, and it would require us to really make an effort. It could start with reading maybe one long article every day to just increase your knowledge. And I feel like all of us here can make that promise to ourselves. But lastly, I come to the most crucial aspect that allows fake news to flourish today. Everything that we do on the internet is recorded, okay? Every like, dislike, every comment, positive, negative, every time you share something, every time you report it, it is all recorded to generate your unique digital DNA. If the internet picks up that you like dog videos, like I said, it's going to show you more and more dog videos, and then the next day, 2 days later, you'll see ads about dog products because it's assuming that you actually own a dog. While all of this sort of seems harmless, it is also applicable to other types of news and fake news consumed by us. If you consume content that is racist or hateful, if you consume content of any certain political party or any type of other stories, the internet is more likely to push the same content your way, helping you make your own little echo chamber that makes you a prime target for the fake news factory. We need to ask ourselves, are we curious to know more, or are we simply eager to have our own biases supported and confirmed? And I feel today most of us are the latter. Fake news stories and videos thrive on our need to react and respond, okay? They thrive on invoking emotions of hate and anger. So I will share with you in the end a method that I have developed for myself as both a consumer and provider of news. We're really intelligent beings. We're in fact the most intelligent beings on the planet, but I feel that we're not using our intelligence to ever take a pause. So the next time you come across a story that invokes a reaction or creates the urge to press that forward button, you should do the following. Literally, if you can take a pause, preserve your reaction. Okay? Do not react. Try not to react. Ask, do I know enough about this issue to be reacting? Use the internet to gather more information. Yes, the internet is loaded with a bunch of bullcrap, but it's also loaded with information, so you can use it. Source information from credible agencies, including governments and news agencies that you find credible or that have developed a reputation of being credible. The more you read, say, 5 or 6 sources, you will end up realizing that, okay, the truth lies somewhere in between what everyone is saying. And the government today relies heavily on the internet to disseminate information. Where do you think journalists are getting their information from half of the time? We're also searching the internet. And lastly, you engage based on your own knowledge. Once you have done the above and you have come to your own knowledge database and your own ideas, then perhaps you will be better suited to decide, do I need to immediately press the forward button? Do I need to immediately send this out and put my comment on it? Or can I take a moment? Can I take a pause? And maybe you'll end up learning a different perspective entirely. So as a journalist, I'm trying my best to circulate information to you that is reliable, that is correct, that is detailed, but hopefully I'm leaving you enough, I'm leaving you with enough to think about, to ponder over, and maybe share with your friends and family as well, because They say charity begins at home, but I believe so does education. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Devika. You have indeed triggered a wave of thoughts within us. I mean, most of us have consumed fake news ourselves. So let's all take a pledge from today onwards to be mindful with the news that we consume. Now I would like to invite Mr. Chahat Mishra to felicitate Ms. Devika with the memento. Please, sir. As we now move forward to the refreshments break, let me remind you all again that this is an opportunity to seize and network with the guests of honor and our very own Shri MJ Akbar himself. On that note, I would also like to thank our refreshment partners for today's event, makers of milkshakes and juicy apes.
Sorry for the confusion. Now we begin again with our next speaker, Ms. Shilpa Suraj. She celebrates the richness of diversity and inclusion in literature, amplifying voices that resonate with authenticity and empathy. Let us embrace the power of storytelling to foster understanding and unity. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Shilpa on the dais. And with her, we have our journalism students Tanisha and Saiba, who will be moderating this interactive session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, ma'am. We are happy to have you here. I'm Saiba Jena, and
I'm Tanisha, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. So let's start with a light-hearted question. Could you please put some light on your journey as a writer? You can.
Yeah, so I've always been, my journey as a writer was interesting because I've always been one of those people who thought someday I'm going to write a book. And when I finally wrote it, I don't know if you want to call it the arrogance of ignorance, I assumed everyone would want to also read it. So with that, I sort of went up on Google and I said, you know, top publishers for the genre in which I write, which is romance. Mills and Boon was right there on top, and I sent off my submission very happily, following their submission guidelines, assuming that of course everyone would love my work. I got a reply, and I realize now in hindsight, with the amount of experience I've had with the publishing industry, that even getting a reply is a huge thing. But I got a reply from them eventually 2 months later saying, you know, your story is rubbish, but you have a really strong writing voice. So if you're willing to work on your story basis our feedback, we'd be happy to look at it again. So what I did was I said, yes, of course, sure, because I figured they'd have a few edits and we would sit down and make those edits. But what I ended up with was a 5-page document which literally ripped everything that I had written apart and I had to rewrite from scratch. So then I printed it out and I started all over again and I sent it back, and thankfully this time they liked it, which was a big thing. And that's how I started writing, because once, I got published, after that, for me at least, there was no looking back. So.
Thank you for the answer. At least we got to know the backstory. Why did you choose romance?
So primarily when I started writing, I chose romance because I read a lot of romance. So it's, when you sit down to write, if you write what you know, then there's a lot of authenticity that comes through in your work. Sorry, you were saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is primarily why I wrote. I wanted to write the kind of stories that I like to read.
There are few romantic books that we read, and we see that it has a very continuous, not to mention the word cliche, but then it has the same kind of storyline. And how do you ensure that your stories are quite different and unique from the others?
So it's not just with romance, it's with a thriller, with any fiction that you write, right? So if you're writing a murder mystery, you know someone's going to be dead at the beginning. There's a body to begin with. If you're writing a romance or you're reading a romance, you know that there is a happy ever after. So there is a general framework in which that fiction needs to come together. But how you make that your own, how you tell a story that's engaging, that's inspirational, that's aspirational, that I believe is where the skill of a writer comes in. So that is where you work on it to bring your own take, and that is where publishers talk about your voice when you write.
That's true. I'd like to ask this question that some of your books are there that you categorize as romantic suspense, like your book as The Right Kinds of Wrong.
Yes.
So how do you keep that romantic tension alive? Like, a romance book is dead without the tension. So how do you keep it alive, like through, your storyline?
So I think the biggest challenge in any romance, not just in romantic suspense, but in any romantic fiction, is that your characters need to be attracted to each other from page 1, but they have to stay apart until the last chapter. So again, that's where your plot comes into it. When you write a romantic thriller, romantic suspense, it is actually easier because there's the whole thriller storyline and that arc which you're weaving through the story. So your characters are actually too busy either trying to find a murderer or not get murdered to have that much time for romance. So it's easy to build out the tension along while you're doing that.
Okay. Are you thinking of diversifying your work? Like, there are a lot of marginalized community, such as our LGBTQ community and queer community. Are you thinking about writing a romance novel on them?
So, I read a lot of romance novels which feature the LGBTQIA community. Will I write one myself? Again, I believe that when you have a certain lived experience, then your writing holds a lot of authenticity in the written word that you put out there. So will I write one myself? I'm not so sure if I will be able to bring that level of authenticity to the writing. Do I like to read it? Yes. Do I believe that representation is important? Absolutely, 100%. But that needs to be representation that is actually true, real, and relatable to the people who are reading it. It should not be a caricature of who they actually are. And for that to happen, the person writing it should actually be able to bring that authenticity to it. And I'm not sure, I'm not confident of being able to do that. I have, however, I do have novels which have sort of flipped gender biases. I wrote a novel called Driven by Desire, in which the heroine was, she was a vintage car restorer and the hero was a pharmacy businessman, CEO. When I pitched to publishers, I was told nobody's going to read about a heroine who's a glorified mechanic. They were like, flip it. Make the hero the vintage car restorer and we'll take the book. I didn't want to do that because the whole premise of my story was to flip the whole gender roles and to say that women could do whatever they want to do. Similarly with Midnight Star, my hero is visually impaired. Again, I was told no one's going to read a hero who is blind. but it still stands to be one of my most popular books today. So should we be writing about everybody? Yes, because everybody is in love, everybody has a love story. Should we be telling those stories? We absolutely should. That is what good literature is all about.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
We have discussed this earlier, but how do you, being a corporate employee, how do you manage your time for your passion and both for your corporate life?
I write at the expense of my sleep, I think is the simplest way to put it. So I'm at work all day. My evenings are for my child. I'm a single parent, so my evenings are only for her and nothing else. I focus on her. But the minute she's asleep is when I start writing. So I'm usually writing till about 1:30 at night. I'm up again at 5:30 to get ready for work, to get her ready for school. So I operate on very little sleep, which is why I look like this. Outside of that, I think when you truly are passionate about something, when something is very important to you, you will make time. Every day requires you to juggle in a different manner. Some days my work requires my attention more. Some days, like today, if I need to be here to talk about my writing, I've taken the day off work. So it's about looking at your day and knowing which part of your life wants your attention and needs you to prioritize it at that time.
My question now would be that nowadays we all know that dark romances are like the talk of the towns. Everyone loves reading it. So what do you think about the themes included in it and their impact on the youths?
So, you know, back in the day, and I say this because I feel very old when I look out at the audience here, but when I started reading romance, the guy was the CEO, the heroine was the secretary. He was the doctor, she was the nurse. Right? The power dynamic in these relationships were just never equal, right? She was the school teacher, he was, I don't know, the CEO of some multinational or whatever. I think romance has moved away from that. I think the roles that we have for the women, for the men have moved, have changed, have evolved. They reflect the world we live in today. Unfortunately, or fortunately, like Devika just said, a lot of our writing is driven by the content that people wish to consume. So nobody wants to read about a hero who is struggling to pay his bills or who is worrying about whether his salary is going to come in next month, right? They want to talk about the guy who steps off the private jet, sweeps the heroine off her feet, flies her to Italy for lunch and to Paris for dinner. No one's interested in the fellow who's coming on his bike, stopping outside and taking you to the nearby coffee shop for a coffee, right? Or asking you to go Dutch. Sadly, there is selling a dream, but I think we work to make it a relatable dream. It's very important to me that my characters are not just relatable, but also aspirational. And by that, I don't mean needing to own a private jet or have tons of money or be this alpha toxic male or whatever it is you want to call it. I mean, it talks about the kind of people that you want to be, the strength you want to see your characters portray, the growth that the characters should show, the arc that they need to have. And I think that if you can make that inspirational and aspirational, I think your story, while being entertaining, can still have a message for everybody.
Since you have talked about toxicity right now, yes, toxic masculinity, how, if in future, like ever, you would write a book on it, maybe, I mean, obviously on romance, will the masculinity, will that be toxic or would that be like something different?
I love that you asked me this question because, so what happened was when I started writing, I said, I'm going to write the kind of romances I want to read, right? So I want to write about real men. I want to write about the kind of romance that could happen to you and me. Because let's face it, no one's stepping off any private jet and sweeping any of us off our feet. Okay, like when do we meet someone who flies in a private jet, right? So I was like, I'm going to write about regular guys, not billionaires, none of this alpha male nonsense, etc., etc. And my books were successful. It's not that they won. They were published, publishers picked them up, they had their reach. The beginning of this year, I decided I was going to do a little experiment. I said, I am going to write a billionaire alpha male romance couched in the framework that people clearly seem to want to read given the success of Animal. And I'm going to do it my way. I'm still going to put my stamp on it, which is how Married in Hate came about. It released February 27th. And it is my Animal. I'm so amazed to say that that book has done more business in the first month of its release than all my books have done combined in all these years.
I mean, just now, Devika ma'am just said that we only give that what the public wants. So you had done that and public literally loved it, which is...
Yes, and like Devika said, right, we are catering to a market. At the end of the day, if I'm writing books that nobody wants to read, then I may as well keep a diary at home. Like, why am I writing? I'm writing because I want someone to read my work. I'm putting it out there for people to read. So there is writing to market, and for me, very importantly, there's doing it my way. So like, I have friends who read Married in Hate and said, you know what, the guy he isn't as bad as he should be. I'm like, because it's just impossible for me to write that. I just can't go that far. So.
Right now you talked about Married in Hate. So your latest novels such as Married in Hate and Married in Deceit, they have a very thematic title.
Yeah.
And the plot is like very, it seems easy to predict the plot. So how do you rationalize the work, or what is your perspective behind choosing the title?
So not just the title, but your cover, your title, your blurb. It needs to give the reader enough of a glimpse into what you're offering them for them to decide if they want to read your book or not. It cannot be misleading. It needs to be clear in what it's offering. If you look at my other titles, none of them would have hate or deceit, or what's coming is rage and vengeance. None of them would have those words in the title. But the point for me is to let the reader know before they start to read what they can expect. Otherwise, they just feel cheated by the experience and they're not going to enjoy it anyway. Because someone who's not looking for that kind of a book doesn't want to have to pick it up, flip through a few chapters and say, no, this is not what I wanted, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, my last question would be, what is that one feedback you've received from one of your writers that has inspired you or maybe has made you feel very happy and fulfilled?
I wouldn't say happy and fulfilled, but if there is one feedback that I remember, when my second Mills and Boon came out, someone wrote a review on their blog and they said, just like all Mills and Boons, plotless and pointless. And 12 years later, I haven't forgotten it. But I will tell you this, because I thought I had a wonderful plot to the book. But I think it's feedback like that. If you can take it on board, go back, look at your work and see what it is that you've missed in that and then work on it, that is what actually helps you improve your craft. But if you go in there saying, look, my stuff is absolutely fabulous and there's nothing wrong with it, you will never improve. You will never see the character growth that we want for our characters. You'll never see it personally then.
So, you're done. Yeah. So, this would be my last question and I guess we'll wrap up the session. So, my question would be, what would be that one particular advice you would give to the future romance readers or writers or maybe novelists?
Advice? So everywhere I go, when I tell someone I'm an author, I'm always told by people, oh, I've always wanted to write. So if you really want to write, you should start writing. So if I have advice, it's that. Because there is never going to be a perfect time in your life when you can sit down and say, okay, now I'm done with this part of my career, this part of my whatever, personal life, and I have this time and now I will write my masterpiece. It's not coming.
Ma'am, I can only imagine how interesting your life is writing romance, reading romance. Thank you. That was a very engaging conversation. Everybody was having fun listening to you speak. I would like to call upon Dr. Satyaprasad to felicitate Mrs. Shilpa Suraj with the memento.
Now, as we honor the literary achievements of our esteemed authors here at Woxsen University, let's celebrate the creativity, dedication, and passion of each of these authors. First, let me introduce Ms. Kiran Eddy. Everyone, please, can we have a round of applause for Ms. Kiran? Ms. Kiran Eddy has over 25 years of experience as an HR transformation expert. Her literary works like Unmasked Leadership, they trigger a wave of thoughts within the reader and send them onto an introspective odyssey. Ma'am, it would be wonderful for you to address the gathering.
I know I'm literally standing between you and lunch. I'm standing between myself and my lunch also. I'm also very hungry right now. So just to give you a glimpse about what the book is all about, the book is essentially about my journey as a leader. So for last 25 years I've been in the corporate world. I have seen enough and more leaders growing and falling down as well. So I thought, why not write a book in terms of, all of us become leaders, but what is it really that, makes us differentiate from other leaders and we are able to leave a legacy. So the book is actually about leaving your legacy as a leader when you become a leader. So how do you go about doing that? And the book is a very, very interactive book. There are 7 lenses and you can actually have a lot of questions that are there, statements that are there which you can answer on a scale of 1 to 5. So you can go through it yourself and keep it as a, as a book which will be a part of your journey of becoming a leader. It's just not a self-help book which you read and you keep it in the shelf. So if you will to look at the book itself, and now that I have the book here any which ways. So if you look at the book, one thing I want to just call out is while I'm an author, I'm a creative person as well. So the book is created, designed, everything end to end by me. So what you see in the front or inside is all done by me. And I just want to read a poem that's a part of the book. It's a very small poem, if you permit me, can I? Okay. I also have to look for the page. Yeah. So when you're listening to this poem, just not listen to it from a perspective of a human being. Also listen to it from a perspective of a leader. When you become a leader, it's very lonely on the top, right? So these are my feelings as a leader and as a human being, and I would just like to read out to you. The title of the poem is I'm a Person. I'm a person, not a human resource. I have needs, social needs. I need to feel belonged, nested, respected and valued. I need to be spoken to. Just messages at times don't suit. I need to be heard and listened to. At times, emojis just don't suit. While AI can rule the world, technology rules mine too. But one thing that always wins over is warm smile from me to you. I have passion and compassion too. I have a purpose and sense of satisfaction too. I huge cabin of your overlooking some, some trees here and there. That's the loneliness that has actually come out when, I also felt that I also want to be nurtured and cared for. Not just because I've reached that pinnacle, people should just look me up as a leader and not take me as a person. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you Woxsen University for inviting me here. I have definitely had an amazing time listening to all the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now I would like to invite Mr. Manuel Lincoln onto the dais to address the gathering.
afternoon, everyone. Some know me as a professor at Woxsen University. Some do not. Today, I'm gonna talk to you about one of my books. This was actually my first book, and I see great evolution since my first book to the last book that I'm about to publish right now. The motivations for these books were very different. Let me first start with this one. This was my first book and the result of my PhD dissertation. After 4 years of very hard work, I came up with almost 200 pages of long dissertation. I decided I had to do something with it. It cannot be just the end of it. So in a PhD dissertation, you have two elements. One is relevance, the other one is science. I removed everything that was about science. I removed all the statistical part, all the difficult things to understand, and converted into a book. I was lucky to publish it at United Nations Publications. They made 100 copies the first time, and they were sent to all ministers, secretaries, think tanks all around the world. And I had an amazing opportunity to go to conferences, to interact with people, and more than that, I was very lucky to have the opportunity to hear from others feedback of my work, which allowed me to learn really a lot. The second book was a very different animal. It was in the same line, artificial intelligence from a policy perspective, but it was more about the result of all that interaction. So for several years, I was invited to conferences, to ministerial events, to the General Assembly in the United Nations in New York, and I got feedback, and I learned a lot. To a certain point, I decided that all that knowledge that I was acquiring was worth putting in paper and allowing everyone to learn from it. That was a very different motivation. It was just the result of an experience that I wanted to share with the others. My last book, just to close this speech, is also a very different animal. After years of moving around, being a professor, doing policy, working in the private sector, I decided that I had to share kind of my memories. So my last book is not really memories. It's actually a collection of 50 elements, 50 situations, 50 moments in my life that were challenging. Those moments happened in Europe, in America, in Asia, in Africa, and I combined the situations, the difficult situations that I experienced with a kind of habit, culture, philosophy of the local places. What is the motivation for that? Well, the motivation for that last book is to allow people like you, young students, young generations, to not to start from scratch. But if I share the experience, if I share those moments and the lessons learned from those situations, hopefully some of you reading the book will start at, instead of a 0 level, start at a higher level. The motivation in general, if I have to summarize for writing, is returning back to the world. We humans learn, and so you will be learning. You will learn in your jobs, you will be learning in your personal relationships, you will be learning in your personal growth, and it's a responsibility for all of us to share that, because the world only evolves through knowledge, only evolves through learning. If we don't learn from each other, then the world could not be the same thing. So at the end, I would like to motivate you all to experience life and do it with passion and do it with energy and do it without fear, but also to share the result of your experience with the next generation, with everyone. This is the only way we can evolve as a country, as a region, and as a planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel Lincoln. Now let's call forward Mr. Brindaban Mishra.
Thank you. Yes, in the morning, one of the speakers said that people wanted 8 seconds attentions. I will only take your 4-second attentions. Okay. I am Dr. Mishra. I have a book. I am alive. I always believe in dead people. My book is all about the dead people. It is history books. Thank you. I save your 2 seconds.
Next, I would like to call onto the dais Mr. Junguru Srinivas.
Thank you, sir. So I do not want to take much of your time because I myself is tired. That too, I spoke on several occasions with regard to my books. My book. What? This girl. Thank you. So I don't know where to start. Basically, this book is aimed at talking about Russia's and China's role in international relations and how they are going to use BRICS as their foreign policy. Particularly with the inclusion of Russia, China at the same time, the kind of resources that this BRICS has when it comes to population, more than 40% of the population belongs to BRICS country, and their contribution to global GDP is 20%. At the same time, their contribution to global trade is 18%. Obviously, it has its own clout in emerging international relations. So that is why I have picked up this topic and wrote this book. It was funded by the ICSR. I received 2 lakhs grant from ICSR, and also I have received 500 euros to write this book from Palgrove Macmillan, and also for doing field trip I have been to Russia and I stayed there for 1 month, and then also I have been to Switzerland to take interviews from Western countries perspective. So basically, I should take this opportunity to extend my sincere gratitude to ICSR and in Palgrove Macmillan for providing this grant to write this book. And don't know whether you will buy it or not. I don't know how far it will be useful for you because it is 18,000. It is there on Amazon and its cost is 18,000. So I don't know. Anyways, thanks for the opportunity for explaining about my book. Thank you once again.
Now let me call onto the dais Dr. Shashi Kumar.
Thank you. I have no claims here. I wrote a textbook, not any kind of monographs here. So I was basically dealing with anthropology, what is anthropology and all that, but I would suggest you to see the darker side of what you call anthropology. So I would like to give you a hint. That was the discipline used more against the people living in colonies by the colonizers all over the world. It was a tool for colonizer for making categories, whether it is flora and fauna, animals, birds, people, political tool to get control of the people where the colonizers were trying to bring into their fold. When we talk about caste and anti-caste pedigree, we must understand that we are also, in a way, using the same tools which are applied to colonists by the colonizers. Maybe it is disheartening you, but it is the truth. Now people believe in post-truth. In fact, it is the post-fact world. So I have no claim. I have published three books. A textbook. It is a confidence that we can also publish a monograph. I thank the organizers. I'm really honored and happy to be part of the Woxsen Literature Festival 2024, and the organizers as well as the Dean, School of Social Science, for giving me an opportunity to speak a few words in this auspicious occasion. And I also thank my collaborator, my colleague in Liberal Arts Department, Dr. Eldos Varghese. He is sitting here, our university, to complete my task. Thank you so much.
Now, this brings us to the end of this wonderful event of LitFest 24. I would like to keep it short and sweet and thank every one of you who made time to join us for the first ever Woxsen LitFest 24. Thank you.
Should I pretend to speak? Should I pretend to show me first कैसे आ रहा है? साइबा, these pictures लेना लेना जल्दी. Welcome you all to the LitFest 24, and it gives me a pleasure to pretend to take pictures. It gives me a pleasure pretending to take pictures. People are looking. So what? So कैसा?
You're welcome, sir. सर हमने बुक लेना चाहिए पर्सन से एक दो उठा के.
नहीं ले सकते तुम वो बुक. नहीं, वो लाइब्रेरी में देने के वापस.
थोड़ा सरक बाजू.
In other terms.